Codependence Anonymous, Chapter 3, A Suggested Program of Recovery, page 62, Step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Made direct amends wherever possible. And so we arrived at a method of making amends to acknowledge our harmful behavior and the other person's feelings in the matter, and to follow that with which a change in our own behavior, except when to do so would injure them or others. We looked at this statement in several ways and included ourselves in the word others. We could not afford to enter into this amends giving with expectation of those to whom we owed amends. By doing so, we could be injuring ourselves with disappointment and possibly resentment. Excerpt from Step 9 in the Coda 12 Steps Handbook. To complete our part in the healing of all our relationships, we must complete Step 9. It is the work we had prepared ourselves for in Step 8. We will have fallen short in our preparations if we approach Step 9 with any motivation other than to ask for God's highest good. We make amends only for the healing of our codependence, not to manipulate others in any way. In addition, we risk failure if we approach this step with expectations of how our amends will turn out. Some of us expect personal accountability first from those who had harmed us. We believe our pain will be relieved if other people make amends too. If our motives for our amends and changes are based on expectations that others will now like, forgive, accept, or become available to us, we're likely to be deeply disappointed, nor can we expect everything to go our way. These expectations can vary from person to person and are usually rooted in fear that the outcome will not be of our choosing. Just as we addressed our fears about possible consequences in Step 8, we must clear our minds of our expectations, offer our fears to God, seek the support of the fellowship, and ask for God's help in letting go. When we approach each of our amends, we remember God is working through us, and we ask for our higher powers, presence, and guidance. We seek the help of our sponsors and recovery friends to determine the best possible attitude to serve God, others, and ourselves through our amends. We allow our higher power to be in control of our lives. In making our direct amends, we recommend simple, direct, and specific communications. We approach God, ourselves, and others with compassion and understanding, maintaining our humility, spirituality, and boundaries to the best of our ability. Our higher power has been there for us always. If our behaviors have been inappropriate toward God in our past, it is God to whom we owe our first amends. Some of us complete this step with God through guidelines set forth by our religious and spiritual organizations. Some of us complete these amends by writing them in a letter and reading it to God in God's presence. When we do, it's important to make time for ourselves to meditate with God, to experience God's love, care, and forgiveness. Although there are many creative methods to approach our amends with God, the best way is to live progressively and healthy and loving lives. If we have been codependent with others, we probably have been codependent with ourselves. Our next step is to make direct amends to ourselves for our self-abandonment, self-neglect, and self-abuse. We may find it helpful to write a letter to ourselves, outlining our inappropriate behaviors towards ourselves. We may imagine ourselves and or our child selves in a room with us while we read our letter of amends. We may ask our sponsor to be there during this time, or we may create time to face ourselves in the mirror and, while making eye contact, share our wrongs and make our amends. However we decide to complete this step with ourselves, it is important to begin treating ourselves with love, respect, and care. Next, we approach all others on our list. We find it helpful to first tell them how we have reached this point in our lives and recovery. We then share our wrongs and make our amends. It is not a time to argue, debate, criticize, or judge others. We leave judgments to God as we outline our inappropriate behaviors and amends. Other people may react angrily. They may be hurt or understanding. Our job is to listen and acknowledge their feelings. A simple formula and guideline for completing each amend is found in Step 9 in the Coda 12 Steps Handbook. To acknowledge our harmful behavior and the other person's feelings in the matter, and to follow that with change in our own behavior. We recommend that we share what we are specifically doing to change our behavior over time. As our behaviors match our words, the people we have harmed will come to trust us more fully. Some people may see our codependent behaviors as normal and want to discount them and our amends. Accepting this lack of insight and reaffirming our wrongs and amends helps us to keep our boundaries and recovery perspective in order. We remember we are cleaning up our part in each relationship, no matter how others may see the situation. Some people to whom we owe amends may not be living or cannot be found. Writing letters and reading them to God and our sponsors helps us to complete this step. We remain prepared, however, for the opportunity to complete this step with those we can't find should the opportunity present itself in the future. Some of our wrongdoings may involve financial restitution, legal or business issues, emotional or sexual problems, or other sensitive areas. These amends may require investigation first, talking with our sponsor and recovery friends, and seeking the guidance of spiritual, legal, therapeutic, and other professional communities can be extremely helpful in determining the best possible approach to each amend. We also need to recognize there are some doors that are better left closed. Though we may be willing, some people and their families would be further injured in our amends making process. Asking our higher power for discernment and discussing each situation with our sponsor and recovery friends will usually lead to appropriate decisions. When there is no possibility of making direct amends, being of service to others is our amends. In giving, we receive. Through God's grace and in giving and in gratefully offering our services to others, we gain peace in a spirit once filled with remorse and pain. With the help of God and the Coda Fellowship, we complete our 9th step and free ourselves of the laborious burden of our codependence. Our relationships with God and ourselves stand on new firm ground, even more spiritually empowered and free. In time, many of our relationships with others heal. True acceptance and forgiveness become sound precepts in our approach to life. Our greater challenge is now to work consistently toward changing and improving ourselves as human beings. By applying our willingness to this challenge, we are ready to incorporate steps 10, 11, and 12 into our daily recovery program. Step 10. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Continue to take personal inventory. There were times it seemed we were being nagged by feelings of fear, rage, hurt, or shame with no clear explanation. During these situations, we put the first 3 steps into action. We acknowledge our powerlessness over this condition and affirmed our belief in God's power to bring us to balance. Then we asked our higher power to reveal what we needed to know about the situation. Usually the answer came and we could take whatever action we thought was appropriate. If it seemed slow in coming, we asked for patience and faith. And when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 10 seemed to suggest that we had made some progress, that we had become capable of handling our lives with even greater maturity than we believed possible. When we were wrong, we reminded us that not every unpleasant situation was our doing. It suggested we could cultivate the willingness to admit our wrongs when the fault was ours and the courage to set boundaries when the fault lay elsewhere. Excerpt from Step 10 in the Coda 12 Steps Handbook. As part of our daily maintenance program, practicing Step 10 helps us to maintain daily accountability, health, and continued growth in all areas. Steps 1 through 9 helped us to heal our relationships with God, ourselves, and others. We shifted the focus from ourselves and others to God. Spiritual empowerment is now our mainstay. We no longer live one up, one down lives. We strive to change our unhealthy, inappropriate behaviors, and Step 10 helps us to remain focused on that goal. This step offers us not only consistency but also continued progress in our present relationships. Continuing to take our personal inventory keeps us ready to change our codependent behaviors. Some of our habits are ingrained. Our goal, however, is to make consistent progress. We look for familiar codependent behaviors and areas where our boundaries with others need strengthening. For many of us, a daily journal is a practical tool for this work. A journal becomes a record of our progress, growth, and areas of our personality that still need attention. At the end of the day, and with our journal in hand, we take time for reflection. Some of us say a short prayer asking God to reveal everything we should know about ourselves from this day. With gratitude, we review events from the past 24 hours. Though this step is intended to focus on our wrongs, we find it helpful to give some attention to our assets and accomplishments in growth and recovery as well. We ask ourselves if we remembered to check in with our higher power periodically. Are we able to maintain gratitude to God for all that has been given us this day? Have we been short with our coworkers or families after a long day at work? Have we been feeling sorry for ourselves or isolated from others? Did we rage, overreact, or passively abuse someone? Did we take on others' feelings or responsibilities? Have we been controlled or manipulated by people, not said anything, and then resented them? These and similar questions help us to take an honest daily look at our codependent behaviors and feelings toward God, ourselves, and others. We look to see if we have been building fear, shame, or resentment toward others. Have we abandoned, abused, or neglected ourselves in any way? Once we're sure we have been honest and thorough in completing our inventory, we remember not to shame ourselves, but to be gentle. To shame ourselves would be indulging once again in our own self-abuse. We determine what amends we need to make and the most appropriate ways to accomplish this. We remember to include any amends to God and ourselves. If we're unsure of the healthiest way to approach a situation, we share the circumstances with our sponsor and recovery friends. Promptness is very important in completing this step. If we procrastinate, we run the risk of not following through at all. Knowing what we need to do for ourselves and neglecting it becomes a form of self-abuse. To progress, we must continue working. Because promptness is so important, we make any amends we owe to God and ourselves each evening as we take our inventory. We ask as well for God's help and grace to accept and forgive ourselves, and for God's strength and courage to correct our wrongs and change our behaviors. Over time, we find it helpful to review our journal. As we do, some of us may see consistent areas where we avoid responsibility and accountability in our relationships with God, ourselves, and others. Often, these are areas where we hold greater fear, shame, and resentments. A review of the values and willingness we established in steps 8 and 9 will help provide healthier solutions with these concerns. At times, our resistance may be greater than the strengths we gain from working steps 8 and 9. We may be bucking against strongly rooted protective defenses from our childhood. Talking with our sponsor and recovery friends can help determine if the person or situation may be triggering deeper unresolved feelings and patterns about people or situations from our past. In these circumstances, and with other strongly held codependent patterns, repeating steps 1 through 9 is our next alternative. In some areas where we seem to find no resolve at all, the professional community can offer support and guidance. Many of us find it helpful to balance professional support with our strengthening spiritual life. As we continue to practice Step 10 in our daily lives, we gradually apply it to our experiences throughout the day. In our growing awareness, we learn to see our wrongful behaviors as they happen. Asking for God's assistance, we make our amends immediately and make note of healthier behaviors for similar situations in the future. We develop an instinctive sense of when to set boundaries with others. With boundaries in place, we are less likely to passively or aggressively react to others, take on others' feelings, attitudes, or realities, or give away our own sense of self. As a result, the remnants of our self-centered codependence starts to disappear. We begin to accept and forgive ourselves and others more naturally. We become better equipped to experience progressively loving, intimate relationships with ourselves and those around us. Having added the daily practice of accountability through Step 10 to our recovery program, it's time to expand our relationship with our higher power through Step 11.